metal is one of the items that can become contaminated. A metal vessel could become contaminated. And we said there's two ways to remove the contamination. One way is by dipping it into the mikveh, and the other way is by um, breaking it. Right? Those are the two possibilities that you could go ahead and deal with this metal utensil, right? To make it pure. Good morning, Mark.
No,
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
the morning rabbi.
Okay, we had left a line of the Gemara yesterday where we discussed, just to bring Mark up to date, we discussed that when a metal utensil becomes contaminated and subsequently is broken, it becomes purified. But if you put it back together, if you recycle it, the rabbis say it goes back to its old state, and it would be considered tameh again. It would be considered contaminated again if you put it back together. And the Gemara wanted to know what's the reason for that enactment. Why did the rabbi say that if you put it back together, it will become contaminated? So we said yesterday two reasons were offered. One reason was there's a concern that maybe you're going to not do a proper job. You might not break it properly, because as we said, the hole has to be the size of a pomegranate. That's called that you broke the utensil. If it's not the size of a pomegranate, that's not called broken. And maybe you won't break it the size of a pomegranate, and therefore the rabbi said that to ensure that the rabbi said we're not going to rely on the breaking process, because there's too many problems that might happen. They saw that people might not do a good enough job breaking it. Therefore, the rabbi said breaking it won't. If you broke it and you put it back together, you broke. You say you broke it, and I filled in the hole. We're afraid that maybe you never broke it to begin with properly. So that was one of the reasons why we said that it's no good. That the Gemara Rava gave a different reason, because people might come to think that you don't have to wait. Good morning. They have upstairs, as upstairs on the bima. Welcome. What's the concern? When you break it, the law is when you break it that day and you recycled it and you fixed it that day, it's allowed to be used that day, right? Because it's no longer contaminated, right? When you do something in the mikveh, you have to wait till the nighttime to use it. But if it was contaminated and you put it into the mikveh, you have to wait till the night. But if you broke it in the morning and it came contaminated in the morning, and then you broke it an hour later, and then you recycled it, and that's another hour later, then it's perfectly good morning. It's fit to use during the daytime. It's not a problem, because you don't have to wait till nighttime because you broke it. But the concern is people might think
But you can't use it because it's contaminated again because you repaired it.
Again, if it's contaminated, it was contaminated at 9 a.m. in the morning, Mark.
Right. And then you broke it. Okay.
And then you broke it at 10, and you recycled it, you fixed it at 11 a.m.
Okay. So 11:01.
Perfect. It could be used on a Torah level. There's no problem to use it, because
Because the rabbi said about the hole and etc. in the break on it. All of that was Rabbanan.
Right. I'm saying the Rabbanan, the rabbinic law is that it gets back its old status of contamination once you recycled, once you broke it and then you fixed it we said that it gets back its old level of contamination. And the Gemara said, why is that? Why did the rabbis make that enactment that if you break it and then you reform it, we say that it gets back its old contamination? Why should it get it back? You broke it. You did exactly what's necessary to be done. So what's the concern? So the Gemara said the first reason, the concern is maybe you're not going to break it properly. That was concern number one, according to one opinion. That was the opinion of Abaye. Abaye says the reason why the rabbi said that it gets back its old status is because maybe you're not going to break it properly. David, is that clear what the issue is? And therefore the rabbi said we're not going to rely on breaking. That's not going to do the trick. That's a rabbinic law. Really, if you broke it, you should be fine. But that's provided you broke it a proper amount. So even when you break it a proper amount, the rabbis are concerned that maybe for the cases that people will not break it a proper amount. That is reason number one. Rava says a different reason. Rava says that we're afraid of the onlookers, the people that see that this utensil, you had this metal utensil. They see that at 9 a.m. it became contaminated. And then they see at 11 a.m. you're using it. They see you're using it. They don't know what you did. They will think that you didn't break it and fix it. They will think that, you know what happened? They will think that you just dipped it in the mikveh, and they will think that you don't have to wait till nighttime to use it. That's the concern. The concern of Rava is that Rava says why the rabbis felt the necessity to impose a status of contamination on this utensil is because they're afraid that you will make a mistake and you will think that when you dip a utensil that became contaminated, you might think, listen, you buy a utensil from a Gentile, you just dip it and then you get ready to use immediately. But here we're not talking about buying, we're talking about it was contaminated. But something that's contaminated, if you go ahead and you break it at it came contaminated at 9, you break it at 10, and then you recycle at 11, and you're using it the same day, people don't know that you used the process of breaking. Morning, Adam. People will think that maybe you dipped it in a mikveh, and they will say that it works spontaneous, if that's the right word, that you don't have to wait till the nighttime. And that's not true. You have to wait till the nighttime. Mark, is the second reason clear? What the concern is?
We're good.
We're good. So now the Gemara says, listen, my benayu, what would be the difference? Now that's the point that we're up to now on 15b2. 15b2 on the right side, second column. My benayu, what would be the difference between the opinion of Abaye and Rava? End of the day, the rabbis say it gets back its status of contamination once you recycle the metal utensil. So what's the difference? And each rabbi gives this reason, that reason. What's the difference what would be the difference between these opinions? That if at the end of the day, the law is the same, so it's the reason for the enactment doesn't make a difference. If it's this reason or that reason, okay, it's good to know. But is there any practical difference between the opinions of Abaye and Rava, just to bring Adam up to date? When a metal utensil became contaminated, then you break it, and then you recycle it, you put it back together. According to Torah law, now that removes the contamination, the breaking. It's considered a new utensil. But the rabbi said that once you put it back together, it gets back its old contamination. And the question is why? Why did the rabbi say that? So two opinions. One opinion because you might not do a good job breaking. And if you didn't do a good job breaking, so you never removed the contamination. And the second reason, because you might just break it because the size of the hole might not have made a sufficient size of a hole that's called a break. And the second opinion is because people will not realize that you broke it. They might think you put it into the mikveh. But a utensil became contaminated. Similarly, a person who was contaminated, it's called, as someone mentioned, a tful yom. if he was contaminated, he went to the mikveh in the daytime, he has to wait till the nighttime to be pure. But people are not going to know that you broke the utensil to purify it. They'll think you dipped it. And when you and if you're gonna if you dipped it, people are gonna come to think that dipping, you don't have to wait till nighttime. You just have to just dip it in the day and then you can use it right away. What? Say it again. Yeah, but you refix it. You recycle. You fixed it. Right. So the rabbi said once you fixed it, it gets back its old contamination. So the Gemara says the difference would be if, let's say, you shattered and you broke it into pieces. The resefina mirtzaf. You broke it into 100 pieces, so to speak. You really broke the utensil, and then after you completely broke it, one answer. After you completely broke it, then what you do? You recycled it. So how do we understand this? What it was? So how do we line up the men? So Rava, according to Rava, when the concern that people are going to think that you dip this utensil is only when you have a small break, a small hole. You made a hole in it. Let's say you broke it not in a very big way. You broke it. It looks like the same utensil because it was broken, but it was not a break that really was such a significant break. It was a break, proper break. But when you break the item completely, then there's no concern that people are going to say that, you know what, dipping in the mikveh, the same day, you could use it the same day, because people will see that the utensil is different. When you break something completely and you recycle and then you put it back together, when it has many breaks, so it's obvious to the onlooker that you know what happened over here. What they did here was they broke it. They didn't you put it into the mikveh. So when you break it with morning mark, so when you break it in so many pieces, and then you put it back together, so there's no concern that people are going to say that, you know what, he dipped it in the mikveh and he's using it the same day. He's not waiting for night because we're not concerned about the size of the hole, right? Right. But people are going to think that you could dip in the mikveh and use it the same day. Oh, why would people not think that? So when you see this utensil, it's obvious. It's like written all over it. I've been broken. And when something is broken, you don't need to wait till the night, right? The law, there's two laws here. There's a law that when a utensil goes to the mikveh, a contaminated utensil goes to the mikveh, if it was contaminated today and you brought it to the mikveh today, you have to wait till the nighttime for it to become lose its contamination. Even though it went to the mikveh by day, but the contamination is for the whole day. Even though you went to the mikveh at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with this utensil, you have to wait till the nighttime. But that's if you wanted to purify it using the process of mikveh. But if you wanted to purify it using the process of breaking, on a Torah level, you don't need to wait till nighttime. And so here, if you broke it now, so what was the concern? People will see the utensil. They saw this utensil was contaminated in the morning. They see it, it's still daytime, and they see you using it. They'll think that you dipped it in the mikveh. They will not think that you used the process of breaking. But when you broke into so many pieces and then you put it back together, it will be obvious to the people that, look, this is not, it wasn't dipped in the mikveh. It's obviously, it has so many cracks. It has so many, look at the utensil, there's so many cracks on the utensil. Yeah, you put it back together, you did a pretty good job, but it's obvious that this was broken. So therefore, and then the fact that I'm using it the same day, not waiting for night, there's no mistake happening because people know what method did I use? I used the method of breaking. A method of breaking you could use the same day. If I broke it at night. Say it again. Oh, very good. Very good. So not always did you have a mikveh near you. Let's say if you don't have a mikveh near you, it's 0.1. Or the Gemara had a different situation. If let's say you need the utensil that day, I don't have another utensil. Your wife needs to cook, and she says, and she got a hole. You remember, we live in a time period. We have many pots. There could be not everybody had many pots. Remember, metal is not something that's easy to come by. We live in a society that metal is like find some metal. Go do some digging. You're digging to find metal. Pot was I mentioned yesterday the laws. On Pesach they did not have a set of utensils that were Pesach utensils and non-Pesach utensils. That wasn't a thing. They used the same utensils, but they had to remove the absorption of the chametz in the utensil. So it's not such a simple thing to get them to get a metal. It's a special thing. So therefore, Rava, according if you're worried about people might think you dipped it and you're using it the same day, no one's going to make that mistake because it looks totally different. That is the reason of Rava. But according to Abaye, that the reason is maybe you're not going to make a proper hole. So any type of breaking, even when you made a proper hole, we are concerned that people would say it's pure, it would work, even when it's not a proper hole. So that would be why, even if you broke it into many pieces, yes, it's true, you broke this utensil into many pieces, and right, it can't hold anything. But what will happen is people will say, if you break, as long as what will happen is people will say is if you break a utensil, you could use it, reuse it, and people will today this guy broke a very proper break. He broke it, he can't hold a pomegranate. But tomorrow the next guy will break it in a way that's as long as you break it, people will come to break it in a way that's not a proper break. Yes, it happened. Today was a proper break. And here we're not nobody right. Here right, but in the we're going to say if we have a specific case, that this particular utensil that's in front of us was broken into many pieces and put back together. Will the rabbi say that it gets back its old contamination out? So according to this understanding, even if there was a very big break, the rabbis are going to say it gets back its old status of contamination. Why? Rabbinically. Why? What's the problem? He did a good break. Today, you did a good break today, but tomorrow somebody's going to not make a good break. We're worried. So even though this utensil in front of us, Rabbi, he did an amazing break. But they say, even though when you did a proper break. Right, now, right. So this utensil that's in front of us, so we're going to say, according to that logic, that we're afraid that the breaks are not, we're concerned about how the break is going to be. So we'll even we'll impose the old contamination on this utensil that was properly broken. Because we're going to across the board, we're going to say that any utensil that's broken and then refixed, it gets back its old contamination because of the concern that when you might not do a proper break. That is.
Well, the other one that you said the first one when it made it see clearly did a very nice job of all that.
Right, so therefore, he would say that opinion would say this utensil that you clearly see that it was shattered, that it's not the same utensil, does not get back its old contamination because there's no concern. It will get back, right? That would be the difference between the two opinions. The reason why the rabbis placed back the old contamination based on how you understand the reason, would have a practical difference between this particular case, this particular utensil that was totally shattered and then totally recycled, then recycled. Would the rabbis place the old contamination on this particular utensil? That's what the Gemara says would be the difference between the two opinions. Okay. Now let's get to a new Gemara. V'idach mahi. What is, we said there were 18 gzerot. We are now on 16b2 on the right side. There was 18 gzerot, 18 enactments that they made when they went to visit a certain rabbi in his attic. We had the students of Beis Shammai, remember that, David? Students of Beis Hillel, and we're going through the 18. What is another one of the 18? Name that tune. Titna. We learned in the Mishnah. Hamaniach kelim tachat hatzinur lekabel behem mekshamim. We were talking, Mark. Remember, we were talking about how do they make a mikveh, right? So we spoke about you can't go ahead and fill up a bucket of water, take a pail, and fill up a mikveh. That's a no-no. To make it kosher, we said there's 40 saw. There's a certain measurement of water that has to fill the hole in the ground. We say it's supposed to be naturally collected. Once it's naturally collected, meaning you made a hole in the ground, the rain came in, then once you've reached that, what do you call it, critical mass, if that's the right, of 40 saw, then you could pour in. And that's what we do today, practically. The mikveh, once the mikveh reaches its proper size, then they pour in the water to change the water, make the water clean, and so on and so forth. They never have to add rain with those days. Like once you've met it with the rainwater, you don't need it anymore. It's today theoretically right, but it's been exactly. But it has the status of the rainwater because once it had the rainwater, what'd you say? What's that it had the rainwater? So now it's still considered good. Now, if let's say you have a pipe, right? A pipe, if a pipe, let's say that's yes, no problem.
If I'm building my base, I'm going to let the rain go into the cement hole that I made.
Right.
I get the 40
saw.
And then okay, I want to close up the building and finish the building. I didn't have to put pipes, I didn't have to do anything.
Right. Right.
But the 40 saw disappears, and then I hit the 40.
How did the 40 saw disappear? There's no water then, you need to have the 40 saw. You have to have, it has to be here.
You have to add water. There can't be a drought in the middle.
Right. If the 40 saw dissipates, it's not there. It's not there. You have to have that original 40 when you're adding the water. Right. If you started with 40, that's called the law. If you have 40 saw and then you don't have, even if today, even the mikveh today, if it had 40 saw and now it's less than 40 saw, it's not kosher anymore. Meaning today, that's why a lot of the mikveh, certain mikvahs, there's a line to see where the water line, where it's up to. That might have to do with that. But the mikveh has to always have 40 saw of water. Meaning if you have whatever the 40 saw, however that space of that amount of water that would be, if today right, that's no problem. But I'm saying, Mark, if you have a small little mikveh, and the whole mikveh was exactly 40 saw kosher, but now you dipped in it, and now you come out, and now because you brought water out with you, you no longer have 40 saw. Now it's no good. Now the mikveh can't be used because you don't have. It's now considered right, like Adam. You don't have 40 saw in the mikveh. Now you have to always dip into a body of water that has that 40 saw. Now, but we're going to see if, let's say I have a pipe. I take a pipe and I attach the pipe to let's say the roof. And I run the pipe all the way down, but the pipe Once I attached, did not the pipe was not. I did not have any hole in the pipe. Meaning, I attached. Let's say I attached something. Look the language of Rashi. Rashi says what will be the case? Right, right. But I want to right. But if I go ahead, if I did not have a hole in the pipe, let's say let's say I put a pipe and the pipe was sealed. Call it a rod. I put a rod on a roof, and I put a rod running on the side of the building like this. But the rod could not hold anything because there was no holes on the rod. It was can't collect anything. So that's not a utensil. So if I would attach that rod to the building, that's how most probably they might have done it. And then subsequently, I would make a hole on the top and the bottom of the rod for water to go through, water to run off. So now, what now? If I do that, so now, then
40 feet, how am I getting this rod?
no, I'm saying let's say we have a small little building or whatever. Whatever. So I climb up to the roof. I chisel out and make a hole on that rod I first attach the rod to the building. If I attach the rod to the building, now that's considered part of the building, right? It's not a utensil. It was not when I put it there. It was not a utensil. So now I go ahead and I make a hole there and I make a hole there. Wait a minute. If you're standing on the roof and I'm at the edge of the roof, I'm standing on the edge of the roof and I chisel a little hole. And I had a pipe and I chisel a hole there. So that there and then on the bottom I have a hole in the. And I'm saying to answer, but what do you say? I'm saying if you made a hole, you made a hole on made a hole on the top.
The first top is solid, the bottom solid.
Yes.
But the whole inside is solid.
Right, but that's not a utensil because it can't collect anything when you put it there. So I'm just showing you this could be some of the ways you were asking how they could do it certain ways to get the water down from a pre-existing building. I'm just saying that might be one of the things they could attach. They could attach it when it's not, when it's solid, and then open it up while it's attached to the building. That's not a utensil because it's part of the building. So now that the water runs through that would not be a problem. That would not be considered you drew the water with a utensil. I'm just showing. I'm just because we're trying to figure out how they would do such a thing. Right, and then you open it up. Exactly, and that's what the case of the Gemara is. How many? That's what the Gemara is told. Let's look at the case of the Gemara. Morning, Morris. Titnan hamaniach kelim tachat hatzinur. He placed utensils under a pipe. The kabo behem me geshamim. To go ahead and to collect. He wanted to catch the water. Now, so there's two things here. There's my utensil that I put under the pipe is definitely considered drawing the water. The utensil is catching water as a utensil. But there's no issue of the pipe because the water went through this pipe that was first attached, then I chiseled out and I opened up. So the water is not considered drawn water as a result of the pipe. Yet, right. So it's not considered drawn water. You got that, Morris? Because the pipe was not a utensil when I placed it there because it wasn't usable because I had it closed on the top and closed on the bottom. There's no hole. It wasn't able to be used. It was and then I attached it to the building, and then I opened up I chiseled out a little hole in the top, and then water comes through. If I would have a pit underneath, if I would have a pit, I created I dug a pit in the ground, I cut out a hole, then it's kosher. That's a kosher mikvah, the Gemara is saying. And even though it ran through this pipe, but it's not a utensil. It was not collected in the. But and it went directly into. It can't be caught in a vessel, right? So it wasn't caught in the vessel. Went direct. It went right down into the hole in the ground. That's fine. That technically should be able to make a mikveh that way. Okay. But what happened was instead of having a hole in the ground underneath, I had a bucket underneath. Now we're getting into trouble. I had a bucket because there is a law that if you go ahead and you drew, if you have a certain 3 lugim, a certain amount. Now we said a reviyit is a reviyit halug is a quarter of a lug. We said a reviyit is around 3 ounces, right? How much does the kiddush cup have to hold? Let's say, according to I think the Svardim, maybe 3 ounces. And Moshe Feinstein says Friday night you should be more 4.5 ounces. But let's say we'll go with the 3 ounces. So 3 is a quarter of a lug. So a lug is about 12 ounces. So 3 lugim is 36 ounces. If you have around 36 ounces of water that's drawn, and when you want to make a mikveh, if those 36 ounces, we call 3 lugim of drawn water, are thrown into the mikveh, placed into the mikveh, into that hole in the ground, if you instead of it collecting naturally, you went and you transferred in. If those 36 ounces were part of the first 40 sa, the part of the first original critical mass that you needed to have to make the mikveh, that will invalidate the mikveh. Again,
any more than 36 ounces.
Any more than 36, any more than 36 ounces, that would not, let's say that would not invalidate still kosher, would not invalidate the mikveh, making of this new mikveh. Once I made the mikveh and I had already reached it properly, 40 sa from natural rainwater, then I could throw in as much as I want. No, a lug. We said lug is 12 ounces, 3 lugim is 36 ounces. Because it said 3 lugim much less. It's much smaller, but 3 lugim we find is considered a significant amount and something of substance. And because it's something of substance, the rabbi said if the mikveh is made with 3 lugim of drawn water, that would invalidate the mikveh. That's a rabbinic law. That 3 lugim of drawn water, one is Solomon, and if you throw water into a mikveh while you're building the mikveh, 3 lugim that are drawn water, that would invalidate the mikveh. So now the question here is, a guy went ahead and he placed a bucket under this pipe to catch the water. So the Mishnah says, what was the size of the bucket? So the Mishnah says it doesn't make a difference whether the bucket was a significant echad kelim gedolim, whether it was a large bucket to catch the 36 ounces, or echad kelim ketanim. You caught the water with a very small jug, a small utensil, and you might have thought that a small utensil is not considered significant to be considered, let's say, something of that might be a problem. You might say it's negligible, such a utensil. But even if you use a small utensil, afilu kalei avonim. Now there are certain utensils that do not receive contamination. That means
We're all worried about
no worried about the vessel have a status of drawn water. We're not worried about the contamination, but the Mishnah is going to state a chidush. You have morning, Boker Tov. There are certain utensils that do not receive contamination, right? Let's say you have stoneware. Let's say you have a stone, and you made out of the stone, you made some sort of vessel, right? Or marble or stone. That does not have the ability to become contaminated. It's not one of those things that the Torah says could become contaminated. We said earthenware could become contaminated, metal could become contaminated. We said the rabbi said that glass could become contaminated, but stone cannot become contaminated. Stone can't be, I mean, the Torah says wood become contaminated. The Torah talks about wood, a wooden vessel can become contaminated, meaning if it's in the tent of a dead body, or if someone who's contaminated would touch that vessel would contaminate it. But nevertheless, there is stoneware, filu kleavanim, even if it's made from stone, which cannot become contaminated. Klei adama. Now, what's klei adama? We know adama is the ground. We know earthenware comes from the clay from the ground, and we know earthenware can receive contamination. So this is not earthenware, because how do they make, one of the earthenware is you put the clay into a furnace. And by putting it into a furnace, that type of using earthenware clay and you put it into a furnace, that will make it into a utensil that the Torah will say can receive contamination. But if you take a blotch of mud, take from the ground, you take clay from the ground and you just dry it out, you leave it out, it's hard and it dries out, and you made a utensil from that. That type of utensil does not receive contamination. You got a difference? If they all come from the ground, but one you put it into a furnace, that's a real. That's a real. What do you say? It's maybe it's because it's better, or maybe it's because it's more of a. Right. So so here we're saying that even though you use a utensil that does not have the ability to become contaminated, but nevertheless, it's a utensil. Meaning, don't think that in order for something to ruin a mikveh, you have to fill it into a utensil that's of significance, a utensil that has the ability to become contaminated, even if it doesn't have the ability to become contaminated. It's a vessel, it holds something, you have the water that you drew in a vessel. I don't care the background of that vessel. It's a vessel. It's a container. So if it's a container and then you filled up the water in the container, let's say if we'll say plastic, right? Let's say I wonder if we'll say plastic, if it's plastic doesn't fit into any of these, let's say plastic will not receive contamination, but it's still a container. If it's a container, you go ahead and you use this bucket to hold water, and you went ahead and you take that bucket of water and you pour it into the mikveh. While you're building the mikveh, the first initial 40 you put in, morning Jack, from this water, that would invalidate the mikveh. That's what the Mishnah states. Now, clay galalim. The Mishnah also states clay galalim. So what is clay galalim? Some say it's marble. It's part of the stone family. And some say it's made from the dung, from the excrement of the animal. And you made a utensil from that. Obviously, it dried out, whatever it was. That's not able to receive contamination, but nevertheless, but if it's a container and you filled it up, that would invalidate the mikvah. We'll see more tomorrow where the Gemara is headed. All the best, everybody. Even though it's natural rainwater, but if you collected it and you poured it, it wasn't naturally collected in the ground, that would invalidate it. That's the problem if you were there for the first 40 sub.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That's Mr. Avis, correct. Ronnie, have a great day.
You too. Have a great day. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you for joining.